Hello everyone, my name is Meghan LeVota and I'm an ENFJ, and first of all I just want to say thank you so much for everyone who has been following me along this YouTube journey that I have embarked on. This video is not going to be super brief. I'm a little tired today. I'm just going to actually go through some Q&A questions that have been sent in through some YouTube commenters and some people on my Facebook page that I've been meaning to get to as sort of a thank you for all of you who have been following me along since I have started making more videos on YouTube. So some of you have been with me since last August. I gave myself a challenge to do one video per day for the month of August, and so I did it. I finally did it, and that's what kind of got me out of the fear of posting YouTube videos. It started to become a habit for me after that. Now, I don't post every day now, but once I got past that fear, now I'm more able to share my opinions whenever they come to me. And if you know anything about ENFJs, we really do want to share our opinions, but it's kind of hard to sometimes. And you know what? I might tear up in this video, honestly, because it's kind of, one, I'm kind of tired and just kind of in an emotional mood, but, you know, I'm noticing that I'm tearing up. Weird. I really do, I don't take it lightly to say thank you for subscribing, since this is like a celebration of 2,000 subscribers. You know, I've watched YouTube for several years, ever since I was in middle school, and I would see people make these sort of videos that are like, thank you for subscribing, and I didn't really quite understand why people did that or what it was for, but I understand now, because I don't know if you guys realize, like, I've been interested in personality type, and I have been coming up with theories in my head and just talking about it with literally anyone who wanted to listen to me for, I think, almost 6 years now. Yeah, since 2012. And not very, as you would imagine, not many people in my daily world, you know, want to indulge me for that long. And so to know that there are 2,000 people that are interested in what I have to say enough to subscribe really just absolutely means the world to me, because, you know, I tend to alienate myself. Like, even though I'm super extroverted or whatever, I do have a lot of friends and I have a lot of acquaintances and I have a lot of people that I keep up with, but it is very rare for me to have the courage to share my opinions so unfiltered like this. And it's been a lot of a challenge, honestly, with some people, like, getting the wrong idea of me, or taking things I say out of context, or just instead of disagreeing with me respectfully, giving me some disrespect and attacking me a little bit. That's been really hard for me to deal with, and I'm not the same person from what I was in August when I started doing this, because not only do I have more confidence in myself to share my opinions, I am confident that I have a tribe of people, whether or not I can physically see them in my city. I know that I have a tribe of curious people that think about these things too, and most importantly, that I'm not alone, because that's, like, you know, my biggest fear is feeling like I am all alone. And so anyway, on to the questions. The first question that I want to address is from Honey Bliss Clothing. What are you like at parties, and what do you tend to do? I thought this was a really interesting question. And if anyone knows why I'm kind of crying, you should comment below and tell me, because honestly, it beats me. I have no idea what is going on. I'm trying to get in the right mindset. What am I like at parties? That's a funny question, because I think that I can sort of be night and day depending on who I am with. Whenever I was in high school, I used to, actually, like, through elementary and middle school, I always wanted a friend group but never really could find one. And it would sort of switch from, like, group to group every year, but in high school I finally got a pretty good group full of people that were in theater and choir and speech and debate stuff, and I just thrived in that environment, especially with theater, choir, and speech, because like in that environment it was all about being yourself and being like kind of quirky and kind of funny, and being a little weird was okay. And we were like the outgoing weird kids, if that makes any sense. And so I really just blossomed in that environment, and I feel like I'm able to bring people together. And so that part of me still very much stands. But then what's interesting is like when I went to journalism school, a lot of people were more muted when you first meet them, or more reserved. It wasn't necessarily a competition to see who's the funniest or who's the quirkiest. And so even though I totally have that in me, like that funny side, which you probably wouldn't even really see in these sort of videos, like how much of a sense of humor I do have, because it's not really the point of these videos. But I still have sort of this part of me that could be like the life of the party, like always cracking jokes. Like I like to get a rise out of people when I first meet them, just to joke around with them to see if they can handle it, just to sort of see like where their limits are, or like if they can hang, you know what I mean? I just think it's funny, but I also make fun of myself in groups a lot. I try and do that to make people feel comfortable. I like just, that's kind of how I bond with people when I first meet them, is by finding a common thing to joke about based on what's going on in the environment around us, or like point things out, or like have like weird observations about things I see and be kind of bold about it and like energetic. But I've also learned like through college and then now out of college, like about how sometimes that can turn people off if you are really obnoxious and just, you think you're hilarious, but maybe the other person doesn't think that you're that hilarious. I don't honestly do that right off the bat as much as I used to, because I think that I've sort of conditioned to not do that as much. So at parties, to answer the question, I can sometimes be like really goofy in like the life of the party, and sometimes be like in a corner, just with one person having a really deep conversation. And sometimes at parties I will go from person to person having a deep conversation. Really my favorite thing would be to have a big group deep conversation, but normally that's not how it goes. And so that is kind of like, I like bringing people together, but I also like having intimate conversations. And so I really liked hosting parties like in college and bringing people together. Honestly, I haven't gone to a real party that much since I graduated, aside from just having some get-togethers. I mean, this weekend I actually introduced about 8 of my friends that some of them didn't know each other before. And it was a good time, although sometimes I get kind of anxious in those situations because I really want to make sure that everyone likes each other. So, but that was sort of fun, and I really felt myself in that environment. Like we went to a concert that I was just, since I was the one that knew everyone there and they didn't know each other, I took that as an opportunity to be even more myself and even more sort of obnoxious, so that they could feel more bonded through the fact that they know me, if that makes sense. So that's kind of how I'm like at parties. It really depends on the group. So sometimes I'll be sort of hanging in the background. Also, like if I go to a party and nobody looks that interesting, I'm not going to talk to them, which might be kind of judgmental or something. But like if I go to a party and everyone is dressed like super preppy and just like dancing and then like listening to music that I don't like I'm honestly probably not going to have much to say. And that's just because I need a reason to talk to someone. I don't just talk to someone. I don't like small talk, and I'm not good at it. I would so much rather like point out an observation or like try and create a mutual experience with the person that we can relate to. Alex asked a question, Which MBTI stereotypes do you consider to be the least accurate, and in what way do you think that this leads to mistyping? Now, this is such a question, and I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to be able to answer all of it because this is such a question, something I think about a lot, something I've touched on in other videos. But the thing that comes to mind most is the NJ versus NP thing. So many people who are actually NJs and actually use introverted intuition test as NPs on the test because they do not have an organized sensory world. And so they were probably late to, they're probably like late to things. They probably don't have a great concept of time or punctuality. And NJs probably don't have the cleanest and tidiest room. They probably don't make grocery lists. They're just not very regimented at all. NJs just do not work that way. And since NJs are the smallest group of perceiving functions, they're the most rare, a lot of times like tests just don't really account for them, especially if you're saying J versus P. It's almost like when you're describing the J, since overwhelmingly more Js are SJs, all of the Js just seem super, super SJ-like. And so I can't tell you how many NJ friends of mine have come up to me and said, oh, I've heard you like Myers-Briggs. Like, I'm an INFP. I'm an ENFP. I'm an INTP. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're an INFJ, you're an ENFJ, and you're an INTJ. Wait, what? And like, that just happens all the time. But then I really know that I'm right in these cases because there are people that are just completely on my wavelength, so similar to me, like just as messy as I am in my life. And also a lot of NJs, like, they always view themselves as though their life is not in order because they have such high standards for themselves. They might think that they're a P because they might be like, oh my gosh, my life is going crazy. When really, no, like, you're way more in control than you think you are. So that's like a huge thing that I see that leads to mistyping. And another stereotype that I really see is that people underestimate FJs. And I really notice this because I'm an ENFJ. People don't think that ENFJs or ESFJs can have unpopular opinions. People think that we are sheep. I'm talking extremely EFJs, but even IFJs. People think that FJs are sheep, and they honestly just are not. Like, honestly, FJs are social chameleons, but we think for ourselves. And we might be overwhelmed by other people's emotions, but people just, especially ESFJs are so underrated. Like, ESFJs do not take shit from people. Like, they see the good in people. All FJs, they see the good in people, and perhaps they're just seeing the good in people over the bad. But if someone did something wrong to them, objectively wrong, an FJ is not going to let that stand. They're just not. The reasons why this is a stereotype that you think that FJs are able to be walked on or sheep or whatever is because FJs have poor introverted feeling and we sometimes don't know what we feel. And so in relationships, FJs might be giving people the benefit of the doubt and not really checking in and asking themselves how into them they still are. And so this is where you can sort of see the stereotype of like ESFJs not really knowing what they want or like putting up with behavior that isn't necessarily that great. Like, I'll tell you one thing, FJs, we might have the problem of settling, but FJs do not have the problem of like straight up taking shit from people. Like, if you were to call an FJ a name, they're not going to just sit there and take it. They're going to yell at you or whatever and then like walk away and just be like, I don't care about you anymore. But if you were to be doing some sort of settled things, that an FJ might just give you the benefit of the doubt and then let a lot of things slide, then sure, that can happen. But I think that people view FJs as really weak and not really understanding that they do have a backbone. It's just like different than yours. And that's what really bugs me about this stuff, is that like TJs and FJs are both different ways of being Js. And okay, That might not really make sense, but it's like, why are TJs more strong than FJs when TJs, like, it's like we're both able to take shit and not able to take shit in like different ways, and it's because of the function that you value. What am I trying to say? I don't know. People just completely underestimate the fact that FJs have strong opinions and take control over their lives. They don't put themselves in situations that they don't want to be in. Like, honestly, it's way more of an FP thing to put themselves in a situation that they don't really want to be in because they don't know how to get out of it. FJs, like, sure, we don't really necessarily know why we feel what we feel sometimes because our introverted feeling is kind of subconscious. But if a situation is clearly not good for harmony, an FJ is not going to stay in that environment. So give them more credit. And then also, I don't know, I think that a lot of women test as feelers when they're actually thinkers because of the way that society has trained them to be. I also think that a lot of INTJs and INTPs test as one another. And that's kind of what I was talking about how NJs, that stereotype is kind of off, in my opinion. So there are a lot of stereotypes, but of course, as you can see, I talked about NI and I talked about FE because those are the ones that I notice. So if you notice any stereotypes that I didn't mention, please comment below, because this is why I love connecting with you guys, is that I don't know everything. I'm just sharing from my perspective. So if you see anything that I didn't cover, like, let me know, because I'm always trying to compile these stereotypes. Okay. So Joel asked, do you think that life circumstance can force someone to have a highly developed auxiliary, tertiary, or inferior function? So I'm actually going to lump this question in with another question that I got from Gail, which Gail says, how do functions develop throughout life for each type? So how do functions develop from Gail, and Joel says, what sort of life circumstances force you into having highly developed auxiliary functions? So the way I view it, and I'm going to link another video that I did below about what is a dominant function, because it talks about this in there. The way I view it is that of all the 16 types, we all have like a pattern of how we use the functions, but all 8 are completely like available for us at all times, but our number 1 dominant function is the one we use first, and our auxiliary function is the one we use second. Tertiary, third, inferior, fourth. And so the way that they develop is through experience. So this is why some people say that you don't develop your tertiary function until you're around like 18, like coming of age adult. And then you might not really develop your tertiary until like later in life. And then some people never really develop their inferior, and some people really never think about their subconscious functions that they don't use ever, or their last 4 that they don't prefer, I'll say. So it really is a matter of one. It's actually 2 things. One, how self-aware are you? How willing are you to grow? How willing are you to look within and notice your patterns and overcome them? Or 2, some people, life just happens to them, and whether or not they asked to look within, it's going to happen anyway. Like, maybe they have a death in the family, or maybe they suffered some other traumatic event. If you suffered a traumatic event or had a traumatic childhood, then like you're gonna kind of be forced to start that growth journey. I kind of view it as a growth journey, honestly. Someone asked a question later that I'm gonna get to about looping, how we can go from our first to our third function over and over. That is true. We can do that. We can skip over or at least think that we're skipping over certain functions, But I really do view it as like a linear sort of growth journey, is that you have to start, if you are an ENFJ, you're going to start with FE before you can even complete the cycle. Now, how good or bad those functions are, how it's manifested, depends on the person, and how fully integrated the perspectives from each of the function depends on the person. But I think that either through 1, willingness to grow, or 2, a life experience just hitting you in the face, a challenge that is being given to you that you're forced to overcome, those are the 2 things that can cause a person to level up and sort of use other functions that are out of their comfort zone. Different situations can force you to have to use functions that aren't comfortable for you. For me, I never really had to study whenever I was in high school because I naturally grasped the inspiration. But in college, I would say that a lot of the tests required more TE and SI, and so I was forced to figure out how to study and figure out how to remember small details of information and then be able to regurgitate it back to a teacher for a grade. And that is very SI and TE. That's why STJs are so good at school. There will be life scenarios that force you into that. If you're a thinker, you might fall in love and then, I need to be prepared for an emotional relationships. Oh, I need to be emotionally honest with my partner. That's going to spur you into using your feelings. So different life experiences will cause people to tap into their functions. And, you know, they say that like you grow up quickly if you have trauma in childhood. That's very true. You sort of are forced to face yourself, face your fears, and face your subconscious in a way. And so I think that journey of facing the different parts of you and those different functions, it really is kind of just like facing your shadow and facing your fears. And that's what the journey of these cognitive functions are. So Farah has 2 questions, and I'm going to go into both of them. So my question concerns something you discussed in a few previous videos, how types that share the first 3 letters but not the last, example ENFP and ENFJ, can appear to have the same interests and problems but actually have different reasons why they are that way. My question is, do you have a personal go-to method to distinguish apparently similar types, especially if most of what you know about them is their interests or their public persona? Okay, so I'm still working on this. I very much believe that there is a go-to way of doing this because, I'll tell you, I used to not be able to distinguish them, but now I can immediately. And I'll tell you what, is that is not really an objective process at this point. I know you guys might be thinking like, oh really, like you think that your perspective is like is like the end all be all or whatever. I'm telling you it's not objective, but I do have a sense, a very, 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 very strong sense of the differences between them. And I'm using FE and NI right now. I'm able to tell based on how someone makes me feel what type they are. Because for me, I feel very similarly whenever I'm around people of similar types. I feel like they're seeing me in the same way. I can feel whenever they get confused by me and why they're confused by me. Like for example, with INTJs, I feel that we're on the same wavelength, but I feel like they have a judgment against the way that I express myself sometimes, or that the way I express myself is confusing and not direct enough for them. But I feel around INTPs that they are sometimes confused with why I said something and not quite on the same wavelength, but I feel that they're way more curious about what I'm saying and have more questions about what I'm saying because they might be interested in the topic but aren't quite sure what I'm saying. So as you can see, these are completely different. Like the way that I react to an INTJ and to an INTP are completely different. And so for me, if someone wants to know, like, am I an INTJ or an INTP, I'm gonna know instantly because of how I feel around them. And so as you can see, this is not quite ideal because I'm using my FE and NI to make the conclusion, and it's not really something that I can give to you guys so that you can know how to do it yourselves, and it's not a really objective, measured way of doing it. But I personally still think that it's reliable because it always has been for me. You should watch Dave's Superpowers on YouTube because he's working on something called objective typing, and he goes through a model and he uses extroverted thinking in his personality, and you can see that come through. And I agree with nearly everything that he says, but as you can see, it's sort of laid out for you in a more extroverted thinking, objective way, easier to put on. And he has one video that's sort of about how, why would we even want this to be objective in the first place? Well, it's so that we can make something out of it, like, that could be, that anyone could use, and not just be like, listen to me, I'm right, I'm the guru. Which, honestly, guys, like, I have trouble with this because I don't really know how to explain to you a really objective way of doing this. I could just tell you what I feel, what I've noticed, and what seems to be true for me, but I will tell you that I'm working on it and that I want to figure out a way to refine what my FE and NI sees and make it something that is more applicable to everyone, because it stresses me out, honestly. I was just talking to a friend of mine who typed as an INFP and is very clearly an INFJ because of how we kept relating. Like, I kept saying, like, sometimes I think this. And she's just like, OMG, same, that's so me. And we just, like, kept being like, that's so me, OMG, you're just like me. And, like, the things that were going through her mind about, like, oh, I just want everyone to like me. And, like, how, like, blunt she was being about how much she wanted people to like her, but, like, in a self-deprecating way. Like, just screamed INFJ. And I just can feel when I'm talking to another NJ because they just get what I'm saying. I don't feel like I have to be like, oh, no, I didn't mean it like this, I meant this. I didn't feel like I had to do all these disclaimers, and honestly, like, that's how I feel whenever I have to talk to NPs. I feel like I have to be like, I'm not saying this. I am saying this, which is very stressful for me, but I will do it because I love NPs, and I have a lot of good friends that are NPs. And I understand that NPs learn best whenever they can look at the opposite and not just what is. They need to know the opposite of what is too in order to truly know. But at other NJs, I don't have to explain myself at all. And so the best way that I know how to type people, honestly, is just by how I react to them. But you know, it's not completely like a subjective thing because whenever I'm looking at how I react to them, I'm thinking like, okay, well, I'm an ENFJ, and so I'm FE and NI, and so how are they receiving my FE and NI? Okay, an INTP might be receiving the FE from an inferior standpoint where they're like a little curious, but maybe a little afraid, a little not sure, but kind of wanting to know what's going on with that FE. Whereas an INTJ has FE in their blind spot, and so they're just gonna not really even be paying attention to my FE. And so the best way to type based on how someone reacts to you is by a lot of self-awareness and realizing what you're doing and how they're reacting to that. So it's not just sort of like, I don't know, I just feel like it. Like, it's like based in the theory, like I promise guys, that it's like I'm noticing what I'm doing that is FE or is NI, and then I'm seeing, are they aware of that or are they blind to that? And whenever I say something FE, are they like, OMG, same? Whenever I say something FE, are they like, oh, that's nice you think that? Or are they like, why would you think that? You know, like, you have to sort of notice that, like, these types, it's all about, like, how we mentally see the world. And I made another video sort of earlier about how I kind of view it as like the parts of your brain that are highlighted, and Dario Nardi talks about the neuroscience behind this if you're interested in that. But I could maybe find a link to that for those of you who haven't heard of that. But I just think that if the same part of your brain is working, then whenever I talk, then you're gonna get what I mean. Because a lot of the communication barriers with people is because I'm talking about something that you don't get. And so that's sort of like how I type people. I type people by that way more than what their interests are. And so, but interests can be helpful. Like if you know like someone is really artsy and just screams like an NF stereotype and is just a bleeding heart just in every way, like wants to be different, wants everyone to love them, super NF, and you're not sure if they're an NFP or NFJ, that's when like functions are going to come in. Awareness of self, awareness of how the functions interact between the different levels or the different placements that your functions might be. Okay, and another question that Farah asked is, what do you think about typing based on body language and movements? And if you've seen INFP and INTJ coffee videos, then you'll see they make a lot of videos about typing people based on the way that people move their eyes, etc. So I have seen some of their videos. I just, disclaimer here, I'm not a huge, I'm not super knowledgeable when it comes to the micro expression stuff, but I know enough about what a micro expression is, and there have been a couple of their videos that I have typed the person differently than they've typed. But a few things I will say on typing people that way, just based off what I'm inclined to believe, which I'm more than happy to look into that typing system more. But we all use all 8 functions, and so but micro expressions don't just show your preferences, in my opinion. Micro expressions can also show your subconscious. So, and I know enough about micro expressions to know, and I like read body language on people all the time without having a word for it, that I know that whenever I'm feeling FI, I would make like an FI micro expression, even though I'm an FJ, because like I've said before, I really enjoy socionics, and I sort of combine Myers-Briggs and socionics as ways to make better informed decisions about what Carl Jung's functions mean. But even though I'm an ENFJ, I also have introverted feeling ignoring. So I have very strong introverted feeling that I do not tap into very often in favor of extroverted feeling harmony. I would so much rather make an effort in the external world to make my life happier generally than to tap into what I need and feel right now and tend to that right now. And so, but if I am in a vulnerable spot, then I guarantee you that I'm going to be giving that off in my body language. And so that's something that I would be wary about if you're wanting to type people based on micro expressions, is that we all do use everything. And so just because you're picking up something from someone at one point, you don't know necessarily where that is coming from. Like, it could be from their inferior, or it could be a subconscious function. So that's what I'm inclined to believe. I do think that if everyone did enough bias training, and if there were more rules in place of how to type based on micro expressions, then I would be interested in seeing if that could work. But just by the sheer fact that I've disagreed with a lot of their typings, and like, that's just a fact. Like, I'm not saying that like the system's wrong. I'm just saying that I've disagreed with some of them, and so it makes me question the system a little bit. But those are generally my thoughts. Honey Bliss Clothing asked, first off, what is your view on feeling a sudden spark with a person and idiosyncrasies, being on the same wavelength, getting a text from them the very moment that you think of them, seemingly mind reading, etc. that might occur? I feel like sensors don't experience the same earth-shattering spark as intuitives, and I think that they get it mixed up with sexual attraction or diminish it to cliched stuff you see in movies. I'm trying to figure that out. What are your thoughts? So I 1000% know exactly what you're saying, because every single time I have been attracted to someone, this has happened, where I feel like synchronicities are happening everywhere. I'm reading their mind, they're reading my mind, and I'm actually, this very recently has been happening with an INFJ, where we are both reading each other's minds, and it is kind of freaking me out. I've never had such an attraction to an INFJ before, but we're very open about like, oh, do you like this band? And I said, I was just listening to them and I was just about to ask you about that band. Oh, I just felt like you would like them. And like a lot of weird like mind reading things. So I do think that intuitives experience this more, because I think that those sort of weird synchronic moments that happen whenever you're in tune with your intuitive self. And intuitives are more likely to be in tune with their intuitive self, because intuitives are going to be more aware of like their higher self and their purpose and what does life mean, and like their spiritual side, maybe, like whatever you want to call it, your soul. They're going to be more in tune with whatever the hell that is than their sensory body, like going to the doctor, going to the dentist, getting enough sleep. We're going to be focused way more on like what the soul wants than like remembering to eat food or remembering to sleep. Because those sort of urges of what does the soul want is way more potent in an intuitive than I need to sleep, I need to eat. And so whenever you are in tune with your spirit in that regard, then synchronicities just start happening, because you're in the flow of who you're supposed to be, and so the universe just keeps rewarding you with like things that seem like crazy coincidences. So I absolutely know how that feels, and yes, that happens all the time. In fact, I don't think I've ever been attracted to somebody without that happening, which it's funny, like my ESFJ mom would tell me in middle school, like, why don't you give that boy a chance, or why don't you just put yourself out there and try and date people that might not seem like you. And that just never worked for me, because sure, I'll put myself out there, like it's not like I've only dated people that seem just like me, but like if I don't have anything to talk to them about, like I'm not gonna talk to them. And what was I saying? Like I gotta feel drawn to someone. I gotta feel called to talk to someone, and whenever that happens, like I'm not really like, my sense of attraction is not really based on someone's physicality, really. Anyway, I made a video about this too, but so I think that whenever I go to someone because of their soul, then it is way more likely for these random like synchronistic moments to happen. So Greg asked, I feel like ENFJs need a connection to where they live, with the opposite being some places that rub them the wrong way. How would you describe how you fit in where you live? This is a very great question. I love traveling because I love picking up the vibe of people, and I think that this is very true. I think that ENFJs are like this because with extroverted feeling and extroverted sensing, we're aware of like the harmonic relations within a sensory space, and we're also aware with our NI that like there's a reason why groups of people like clump together. There's a reason why, if you look at the election map in 2016, how certain people in certain clumps voted one way and certain people in other clumps voted other ways. It's because like-minded people kind of cling together, like for better or for worse. And going beyond the whole voting thing, people have like different cultures. Like if you think that different countries have different cultures, you gotta realize like different cities also have different cultures too. And so I'm from Kansas City. I've only ever lived in Missouri. I have traveled to lots of cities, and I definitely feel a huge like different like vibe from the East and West Coast versus the Midwest. And the thing that I think that I fit in the most with where I live now is that people seem extremely genuine and extremely connection oriented. So no offense to the South, but in my experience, it seems like a lot of people in the South, they have that sort of Southern hospitality that can kind of seem fake, honestly. I think that Kansas City is kind of a good happy medium of like, there's definitely going to be hospitality. Like, people are going to open the door for you. Like, why would they not? But it doesn't feel fake, at least to me. But also, I'm from here, so I don't really know anything else. But there's sort of sense of community. People will, like, look at you in the eye and, like, half smile at you when you're walking down the street. And so I feel like I like that. And I feel like it's kind of an underdog city that's kind of on the rise, which is kind of cool for me to see how the energy here right now, people are wanting to realize their full potential. And it's been a pretty humble city most of the time I've lived here, almost too humble, where you might not have even heard of Kansas City that much. It's because we don't really brag about ourselves very much. Some cities brag about themselves too much. St. Louis. Sorry. But some cities brag about themselves too much, and then you visit and it's not that great. I mean, even like places like New York and LA could probably be this way, where it's like, really? That's not all it's chalked up to be. And for me personally, like, I want to like move somewhere else eventually, but I haven't found a place that was that much better than Kansas City to justify the cost, like, of having to spend like twice as much. I mean, like, Kansas City has everything you would need. Like, there's a lot of young people here. There's a lot of like hip bars, hip coffee shops, like a lot of community centers. Like, I don't know. Like, there are a lot of cool cities. I really like Denver. I really like Portland. I have a lot of friends that live in LA. Like, there are a lot of cool cities. I personally did not like DC nearly as much as I thought I would, or like the East Coast in general, which I can see that being a place where I would want to visit a lot because I like how driven they are, but it doesn't seem to have a very strong, like, collaborative mindset. Kansas City is incredibly collaborative, so I think I fit in there in that regard. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, there's still a lot of issues with it. Like, I wish that it was way more diverse, and I wish that it was way more open-minded, but I think that it's a city that's kind of realizing their potential right now and has always been pretty collaborative, and I think it seems like a good opportunity for me to try and open people's minds who are around here and help empower us to be the best place we could be. So that's how I feel like I fit in. Zubir asked, how do you help someone break out of an unhealthy, dominant, tertiary loop? Well, the number one thing I would recommend for helping people come out of loops is that instead of telling them you're wrong, you're unhealthy, or you should be doing this or this, instead to ask questions that will lead them to come up with the right answer themselves. And if you're dealing with a friend and you know the personality type and you know that they should be using their auxiliary function more and not just looping around and around, then I would just like prompt questions that would get them to introspect. Like, whenever I was in like this unhealthy relationship with an ENFP for like a year, where he threatened to kill himself whenever I did not want to date him anymore. And it was really hard for me because I really loved him, but I did not want to be in a relationship anymore. But I felt like if I left, then he was going to kill himself. That, I know that was really like a big thing to go through, whatever, but it was my ENFP friend that kind of helped me out of that. But anyway, I was not really using my NI in that whole time I was dating him, honestly. I was just trying to please and trying to have a good time, and I didn't really notice how my actions were actually impacting my long-term future, the things that I was missing out on by investing in something that wasn't investing much in me back. And so the friends that have helped me, that did help me through that, kind of asked me questions to prompt me to use NI, like have me really look into the future of like, what happens if you don't break up with him? How much longer is this going to go on? And like make me really realize like the impact of what I was doing, and using NI made me get out of the loop, essentially. And so there's really not an easy answer for that. You just gotta let your trust that your friends are doing the best that they can, and everyone's doing the best that they can at all times. So go easy on each other, but if you notice something like that, then just try and prompt them with some questions. Honey Bliss Clothing also asked, what is your take on epiphanies and how often do you get them? Okay, I should have just linked this up with the other question from earlier. I'm going to make this quick because I have a few more to get to. But yes, I get epiphanies all the time. And kind of what I was saying earlier about intuitives when they're more in touch with their soul, I think that's when you get epiphanies. I think that the universe hands them to you whenever you're aligned with your soul. And if you're out of touch with your soul, then you aren't going to get them as much. But remember, intuitives, you aren't so special because you also need to be in touch with your body sometimes. Maybe you can learn from sensors. Maybe you can learn to get some sleep. And remember to eat a good, healthy lunch. And breakfast is the most important meal of the day. So, yeah. But anyway, I think that people that are more in tune with their intuitions are more likely to get epiphanies. And, yeah, that's pretty much my take on it. If there are anything I didn't answer, that could be a good future video topic. Isaiah asked, you may have explained this in another video before, but how many and what other resources have you taken to learn about socionics, typology, self-growth? What would you say are the best resources? So I did make a video about this that I'm going to link below. But I also wanted to say that the best way that I learn is by observing people of the types interact and constantly asking questions about why they're acting that way and trying to see the functions in action. So when I first learned about this, I was on Personality Cafe all the time, reading all of the messages, and I would start to notice themes of like, all the INTJs seem to talk this way. All of the ENFPs seem to talk this way. I was on the NFP or NF Geeks like board on Facebook. I've been in a lot of different Facebook groups. Before I even started commenting very much, I was mostly just observing and trying to notice the trends and trying to really notice the functions. I learned a lot about the functions. I read the book. Well, I read the classic books of like Gifts Differing and like Please Understand Me by Kiersey. I read those, but the one that really helped me understand functions was Personality Type and Owner's Manual. And okay, I know James asked what sort of books. That's really the main book that I've read, which is Personality Type and Owner's Manual by Lenore Thompson. Oh, and aside from like Carl Jung's books and talks on it, but Lenore Thompson, that was easiest for me to understand the functions, but most of my learning is from just observing on discussion boards and watching YouTube videos. But for me, I didn't watch educational YouTube videos of like, this is how it is. Let me tell you that this is the definition and this is how it works and this is how it is. I don't like that. I'm just not, I don't learn that way. And props to you if you learn that way. Props to any YouTubers watching this that do that. I don't want to be told this is the way. I want to figure it out for myself. And that's what I've done by observing people in real life. I think that ENFJs and ESFJs, we get this stuff of what type is more than any other personality. ENFJs and ESFJs, we just get personality types because FE is naturally categorizing people and thinking about people all day long and thinking about what their reactions are going to be and thinking about why they do the things they do. This is what we do. And just because we can't explain it super objectively with a fun little definition for you doesn't mean that, like, that's not what we're doing all day long. And again, people underestimate FJs. My sister's an ESFJ, and she did not have to read much about personality type to be able to type anyone that she sees because she's always thinking about people. She can tell who is similar, who's not similar, and how they sort of go into, and for better or for worse, EFJs sort of box people into groups. And that's just how our brain works. And so type was really easy to grasp. And so for me, instead of trying to read a book, because if someone wrote a book, you have to realize that they were one personality type. I don't think that there is a book where each type spoke for themselves. And it's good to have other types speak for other types too, because then they can sort of point out the weaknesses. But normally it's not very even, where like an ENFJ description is written through the lens of an FP, and they don't get why an ENFJ is doing that. Or an INTJ describes a TP and they're just way off. Like, a lot of this is just way off. You gotta know that a lot of the descriptions are wrong. Like, you gotta talk to real people, and that's what I've done. Like, talk to real people and notice it in real life. And noticing it in real life through my actual friends is how I have come to my conclusions. And so the last question is Elijah. Some suggestions for other YouTubers to start a channel or to get to this point. I love the internet. I love that we are living in a world where there is information everywhere at our fingertips. And I think that anyone that has an opinion should, if they want it out there, should share it. I don't think that YouTube is the best place for everyone. Some people like writing, some people like podcasting, some people like to get their thoughts expressed visually, just like through a painting or something, or through music. I just want everyone to be able to express in the best way that they can, and if you don't really like expressing that much, that's fine. But if you think that you want to start a YouTube channel, you're gonna have to want to think about what starting a YouTube channel actually is. You're gonna have to talk to a camera. You're gonna have to put yourself out there in response to haters or super lovers that want to message you all the time. Like, you're opening yourself up there to being a public figure in a way, and you have to be prepared for that. You have to enjoy the act of making videos. You have to have a thick skin. You have to like talking, and you have to like the process. Don't start a YouTube channel if you want to make money, because it's not going to be that lucrative. Like, if it's only going to work if you really like what you're doing, and people are only going to subscribe if they can tell that you really like what you're doing. So if you have gotten past that and you're like, yes, I want to start a YouTube channel, yes, I have something to say, and yes, I love talking in front of people, I'm totally prepared for that, then what I want to know is what is holding you back. Because if you think it's fun, then why aren't you doing it? If you want to have a YouTube channel because you think it's fun, which is the only real reason why you should be doing it, then why aren't you doing it? What's holding you back? Okay, maybe it's fear. If it's fear, then just try and push yourself to do it. And then if you could do it, then you'll start to have more momentum, and you're going to start to enjoy it a lot more. That's at least how I approach things. Yeah, a lot of times it's just fear, but sometimes it's not the best venue for you, and it's not really for you. I mean, I want people to do things that they feel inspired to do, and you're gonna get subscribers if you enjoy what you're doing. If people like watching people that are geeking out about whatever they're geeking out about, people like watching people who are passionate. So if you don't have the passion when you're doing it and you're like super nervous, you probably aren't going to get any subscribers. But if you love it and you're putting the video up there just for the sake of doing it, then you're gonna do great. And so that's what I would recommend. If it feels fun for you, if it feels right for you, and you enjoy doing it, then please do it by all means. So anyway, those were the questions that I wanted to get to. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it through this entire video, please comment with your favorite emoji that you think describes your personality type. I would love to learn that, and I really appreciate you guys again. I'm excited to keep making more videos, and I'm excited to make more thought out videos and less that are just off the cuff, even though for me, like I just said, it just feels right. It feels fun to do off the cuff stuff, even though I have so many things I've been thinking about wanting to share. But anyway, thank you for following me along this journey, and have a wonderful day.